This exam skills screencast is going to show you some strategies to help you display explicit evaluation in your A Level Sociology exams and therefore boost your overall mark for assessment objective number 3. Now, the most basic form of evaluation that candidates might demonstrate in an essay question is evaluation through juxtaposition. So as you can see on the screen, this simply involves displaying knowledge of different perspectives, different arguments separately. So for example, if you had an essay question that asks you to assess a particular viewpoint, evaluation through juxtaposition would simply be saying, on the one hand, here are some arguments that support the claim, and on the other hand, here are some arguments against the claim. And the problem with that basic form of evaluation is you're not actually making a judgment about which arguments, which theories, which bits of evidence are the strongest and which are the weakest. In fact, evaluation by juxtaposition implies a kind of relativism where all arguments might be equally worthy. And therefore, to get a higher mark for AO3, you need to display explicit evaluation in your answer. So you need not just to describe different perspectives and arguments, but directly compare and contrast them, using one perspective to criticize or support another, and you need to be able to discuss very specific strengths and weaknesses of the arguments, evidence and theories that you are presenting. And this really is the key to getting more marks for AO3. So in the rest of this video, I'm going to go through 3 specific strategies that you can use within your examination answers to display the skill of explicit evaluation throughout your answer. And it's important to make sure that evaluation isn't just left for the concluding paragraph, but runs throughout your essay question. The first thing that you can do is include some explicit evaluation inside a paragraph close to the point being made, and this is generally a critical point that you might be making. So a good place to gain recognition for evaluation is the last sentence before the close of a paragraph, and the strategy that I'm going to show you is one that the sociology teacher, Chris Deakin, calls the Columbo moment. Columbo was a famous American cop show, and every single episode follows a particular formula. So as Chris Deakin writes, this bedraggled cop finds himself each episode confronting the murderer or thief early on in the show, and he talks with them, and they appear initially to have conned him with some watertight alibi. Columbo is then seen approaching the door to leave the room, apparently accepting this version of events unquestioningly, but then he does his trademark pause. He does this every episode. He grabs the doorknob, is about to open the door, and then turns back to face the perpetrator. He's scratching his head and utters the phrase, "Sir, there's just one thing that's puzzling me," and bang, he challenges the alibi with a critical point which catches the villain off guard. And this is what you can do within some of your paragraphs in your essay questions. You can allow a point to be presented unchallenged, and then right at the end of the paragraph you have that Columbo moment and you say, however, there's just one more thing. And then you try and make a really pertinent and penetrating criticism of the argument that you've just presented. Let me show you some concrete examples of students using this technique in response to the question that you can see on the screen at the moment. Assess the view that youth cultures are closely linked to social class. So what I suggest that you do now is hit the pause button and read through the 2 paragraphs that you can see on the screen at the moment. So hit the pause button now. And what you should have noticed is you get this just one more thing moment at the end of each of these paragraphs. So for example, in relation to the first paragraph, we've got a description of the Marxist approach to the analysis of youth cultures, and then right at the end we've got this just one more thing moment where this candidate criticises the perspective by raising a very pertinent criticism of the semiotic approach. And here's another example from a different candidate answering the same essay question. So here we've got a description of Thornton's research into club cultures and her argument that social class was not a significant factor. But then we've got at the end of the paragraph this just one more thing moment when the candidate raises questions about the representativeness and the generalizability of Thornton's research, which is based on ethnography. And here are a couple of other examples. Again, if you read through this paragraph, and then we get the just one more thing moment right at the end of the paragraph. So we see the same technique with this answer. And what you can see on the board at the moment is a grid with some useful questions that can be used to help you generate some specific criticisms of arguments, of theories, of pieces of evidence that you can use towards the end of your paragraph. But of course your ability to generate criticisms in relation to these questions also needs to be based on really good knowledge of theories and arguments. It's very difficult to do meaningful evaluation without a firm knowledge base. And to simplify things even further, when you're evaluating explanations and theories, these three questions can be quite useful. So ask yourself, what does the theory ignore? What are the blind spots of the theory? What things are left out? What are the underlying assumptions that the theory is making? Can any of those assumptions be challenged? And what does a theory overemphasize? Now it might get a little formulaic if during an essay, at the end of every paragraph in the main body of your essay, you end with a Columbo moment, with a however type moment. So you want to use other devices, other strategies to demonstrate explicit evaluation throughout your answer. And another strategy that you could use is to include mini paragraphs throughout your answer where you explore and evaluate a specific argument in more detail. So once again, hit the pause button and then read through the 3 paragraphs that you can see on the screen. So the first 2 paragraphs are all about knowledge and application. So we've got explanations here of the Marxist approaches to youth cultures and how they support the idea of social class being a very significant factor. And then this is followed up with a mini evaluation paragraph at the end. And one of the advantages of using mini evaluation paragraphs of maybe 3 or 4 sentences is it gives you the opportunity to evaluate an argument in a bit more detail than simply adding 1 or 2 sentences at the end of a paragraph. And on the screen at the moment is another example of a mini evaluation paragraph that followed a section of a student's answer where they were looking at Marxist views. Okay, the final strategy that I want to explore in this video is writing an essay paragraph near the end of your essay. Again, this is an idea that Chris Deakin writes about. He argues that to add that wow factor to an answer, you should try and include a discussion paragraph near the end of the answer that just opens your answer up a bit. And we're going to call this paragraph the smart ass paragraph, or the essay paragraph for short. So Chris Deakin makes a number of suggestions about what to include in the essay paragraph that you can see on the screen at the moment. So the ability to apply debates to the real world, reflecting on the extent to which society has changed, including a section where you explore the main theories that you've discussed and their underlying biases. And then one that I would add, which I think can be quite useful for certain types of questions, is to question the question in your essay paragraph. So for example, if you were to get a question in the media section of component 1 that was asking you to make a judgment about, I don't know, the extent to which the media promotes gender stereotypes, one easy way in which you can question the question is to say, well, what exactly do we mean by the media? And is the media something that we can generalize about, given the enormous diversity nowadays, particularly with the development of digital media? Another example where you might want to question the question could be from world sociology. So a very popular debate in world sociology is whether or not overseas aid is positive or negative. And again, you can question the question because really the answer to that question is very, very complex, and it depends on the type of aid that you're looking at. We can't necessarily generalize about aid as a whole, as is often implied by exam questions. And here's an example of an essay paragraph to the question that we've been looking at on youth cultures. So this candidate is being a smart ass because they're trying to bring the debate up to date by reflecting upon things that have been going on in the real world, particularly the impact of the global financial crisis. And a real benefit of including an essay paragraph maybe just before you reach your overall conclusion is that one of the last things the examiner is reading in your answer is evidence of explicit evaluation, and that might help them to decide whether or not to put you in a higher mark band for AO3.